My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. I'm a 28-year-old man from a family with a long and twisted history of blatant favoritism. My younger sister, Amy, now 25, has always been the apple of my parents' eye, especially my father's, while I was left on the sidelines. From the earliest stages of our childhood, this unfairness was glaringly obvious, and it only deepened as we got older. Amy was the undeniable golden child. One of my clearest early memories is when Amy was only 2 years old and I was 5. Our parents went all out for her birthday, organizing an extravagant celebration with professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and even a petting zoo. That same year, for my birthday, they handed me a basic store-bought cake, and we had a modest family dinner. It was a subtle sign of things to come, setting the tone for how our lives would unfold. As we grew up, the favoritism became even more glaring. Amy always had the latest and greatest toys, the nicest clothes, and the lion's share of our parents' attention. I remember saving for months to buy a new bike when I was 10. The day I finally got it, Amy saw it and threw a fit because she wanted one too. Instead of teaching her patience or helping her earn her own, my parents immediately went out and bought her a newer, fancier bike than mine. It crushed me, and yet it wasn't the last time they'd undermined me. The school was another battlefield where favoritism reigned supreme. My parents were always there for Amy's school events. Her recitals and functions were always top priorities. When it came to my achievements, however, they were hardly ever present. I still recall a particular moment from the 4th grade. I had landed a starring role in the school play and practiced for weeks, filled with excitement for my big moment. On the night of the performance, my parents arrived an hour late, having been delayed because Amy had a stomachache, which she quickly recovered from. They missed my scene entirely. I was devastated, but they shrugged it off. Academically, I worked incredibly hard, excelling in almost everything I put my mind to, but no amount of success seemed to impress my parents. I joined the math club, earned straight A's in middle school, and even won first place at a regional science fair. My parents barely acknowledged these accomplishments, but when Amy managed to score a B+ in her weakest subject, my parents treated her to a celebratory dinner and gifted her a new phone as a reward for doing so well. High school was where the divide between us became a gaping chasm. While Amy floated through with a C average, spending most of her time hanging out with friends, I threw myself into schoolwork and extracurricular activities. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, became the editor of the school newspaper, and captained the debate team. Despite my dedication and achievements, my parents never seemed to care when I was chosen as one of 2 students from my university to participate in a prestigious Harvard summer program. My dad simply grumbled and shifted the conversation to Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom, as always, gave a dismissive, "That's nice," and quickly moved on. When the day came for me to leave for the Harvard program, my parents refused to drive me to the airport. It coincided with Amy's dance concert, and they didn't want to miss it. I had to ask a friend's parents to take me. Once again, my accomplishments were overlooked in favor of my sister's more trivial interests. The college application process was another grueling reminder of my parents' neglect. I spent months perfecting my essays, engaging in extracurriculars, and preparing for exams. I was accepted into several elite colleges and received a generous scholarship to my dream school. Yet, when I shared the exciting news with my parents over dinner, their reaction was barely lukewarm. My dad's only comment was, "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. College isn't everything." My mom chimed in with, "Just remember us when you become a big shot." In stark contrast, when Amy barely scraped through high school and decided against going to college, they celebrated her decision. They praised her for knowing herself and for rejecting societal expectations. To top it off, they bought her a car as a graduation present. Emotionally, this constant favoritism left deep scars. In my teens and early 20s, I struggled with anxiety and depression. I eventually sought therapy in college, where I slowly started to understand that my parents' treatment of me was not my fault. It took years of hard work to rebuild my self-esteem and learn to find validation from within, rather than seeking it from my parents. Despite their lack of support, I managed to carve out a decent life for myself. By the time I graduated from college with honors, I had secured a good job in finance and even purchased my own house at 27. My Parents weren't proud of me, but I was proud of myself. And then the latest drama unfolded. My grandfather on my father's side passed away not too long ago, leaving behind a considerable estate. He had been a self-made businessman who worked his way up from nothing and accumulated significant wealth. In his will, he divided his assets equally among his children and grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins. My portion amounted to about $500, a life-changing sum that could allow me to pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and perhaps even start my own business. However, when the will was read, my parents became visibly upset. Later, they pulled me aside and expressed their belief that it was unfair for me to receive an equal share, claiming that Amy, who was still living at home and working part-time at a coffee shop, needed the money more than I did. I was floored. They argued that I should do the right thing and give Amy my inheritance. When I refused, they became furious, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. My dad dredged up every instance where they had helped me throughout my life, from paying for my braces, which were medically necessary, to buying me school supplies. He conveniently ignored all the extravagant gifts they had showered on Amy over the years, the car, the shopping sprees, and the fact that they were still financially supporting her at 25. Things escalated quickly. My dad, who was the executor of the will, declared that he would interpret Grandpa's intentions in such a way that Amy would receive my entire inheritance. He claimed that Grandpa would have wanted it that way if he had known our unique circumstances. I was devastated. Not only was this blatantly illegal, but it was also a painful reminder of how little my parents thought of me. I tried reasoning with them, pointing out that Grandpa had treated all his grandchildren equally and was fully aware of our situations when he wrote the will, but they were resolute. My mom accused me of disrespecting the dead by suggesting that Grandpa would have wanted anything different from what my dad was proposing. Amy, for her part, was awkwardly neutral. She didn't outright support our parents' actions, but also didn't oppose them. She simply shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." My parents tried to divert my inheritance to their favorite child, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. I am a 28-year-old man who comes from a family that has a long, complicated history of favoritism. My younger sister, Amy, who is now 25, has always been the apple of my parents' eye, especially my dad's, and this preferential treatment started when we were just kids. As time passed, their favoritism only intensified. Amy was always the golden child, getting the best of everything, while I was left behind in the shadows. One of my earliest memories of this favoritism goes back to when I was 5 and Amy was just 2. My parents threw her an extravagant birthday party complete with professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and even a petting zoo. Meanwhile, for my birthday that same year, I had a simple store-bought cake and a small family dinner. It set the tone for years to come, where the differences between how we were treated only became more obvious. As we grew older, the discrepancies between how we were raised became more glaring. Amy always got the latest toys, the most fashionable clothes, and far more attention. I remember saving up for months when I was 10 to buy a new bike. When I finally got it, Amy threw a fit because she wanted one too. Instead of teaching her to save up like I had, my parents went out and bought her a brand new, nicer bike than mine. This was just one example of many where their bias was blatantly obvious. The favoritism was not limited to material things. At school, Amy could always count on our parents to show up for every event, but they hardly ever attended mine. When I landed the lead role in a school play in the 4th grade, I rehearsed for weeks with excitement. On the night of the performance, my parents showed up an hour late, missing my big scene. They had spent that time consoling Amy, who had claimed to have a stomachache, something that miraculously disappeared by the time they got there. When it came to academics, it didn't seem to matter how well I did. Despite joining the math club, earning straight A's, and even winning first place at a regional science fair, my accomplishments were barely acknowledged. Yet when Amy scored a B+ in her weakest subject, my parents threw her a celebratory dinner and bought her a new phone as encouragement. High school was even harder. Desperate for their approval, I threw myself into every activity I could manage while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I became the editor of the school newspaper and captain of the debate team, all while Amy coasted through with a C average and spent most of her time hanging out with her friends When I was selected to attend a prestigious summer program at Harvard during my junior year, I was thrilled. It was an honor, and I couldn't wait to share the news. At dinner that night, my dad barely grunted a response before steering the conversation toward Amy's upcoming dance recital. My mom's only comment was, "That's nice, they couldn't even drive me to the airport." Because Amy's recital was on the same day I was supposed to leave. When it came time to apply for college, I worked tirelessly on my applications, participated in extracurriculars, and studied hard for the SAT. I was accepted into several prestigious schools and received a generous scholarship to my top choice. When I told my parents, their response was lukewarm at best. "That's good, but don't let it go to your head. College isn't everything." My dad said, "Just remember us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mom added. Meanwhile, when Amy barely graduated high school and decided not to attend college, they praised her for knowing herself and rejecting societal expectations. They even bought her a car as a graduation gift. The emotional toll of this constant favoritism took a severe toll on me throughout my teenage years and into my early 20s. I struggled with anxiety and depression and started therapy in college, where I eventually came to terms with the fact that my parents' treatment wasn't my fault. It took years of hard work to build my self-esteem and learn how to validate myself without needing their approval. Despite the lack of support from my immediate family, I managed to build a successful life for myself. By the time I was 27, I had graduated with honors, landed a stable job in finance, and bought my own home. While my parents might not be proud, I am proud of my accomplishments, and that brings me to the current situation. Not too long ago, my grandfather on my dad's side passed away, leaving behind a sizable estate. He had been a self-made man who had built a successful business from the ground up. In his will, he divided his assets equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, my dad and his siblings. My share amounted to roughly $500. A substantial amount that could help me pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business. Naturally, I was thrilled with this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it could provide. But when the will was read, my parents' reaction was far from supportive. They were clearly upset, and later pulled me aside to tell me that they thought it was unfair for me to receive an equal share. Amy, who still lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, they argued, needed the money more. Shocked, I calmly explained that Grandpa had made his decision and it wasn't for them to decide. They insisted that I should do the right thing and give my share to Amy. When I refused, they became furious, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful. Things escalated quickly. My dad, who was the executor of the will, decided to take matters into his own hands. He announced that he would interpret Grandpa's intentions differently and give Amy my entire share, claiming that if Grandpa had known about Amy's struggles, he would have wanted her to have more. This was not only illegal, but also a painful reminder of how little my parents valued me. Desperate for support, I turned to my paternal grandmother, Grandpa's widow, and told her what was happening. She was livid. She informed me that my parents had no right to alter the will and that this was the exact opposite of what Grandpa had wanted. After Grandma shared the full extent of my parents' favoritism, she also revealed something that left me both heartbroken and validated. My grandfather had kept a personal scrapbook of all my achievements. It was full of newspaper clippings about my academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from a university play that my parents had been late to attend. Realizing how much my grandpa had cherished my accomplishments, even if my parents hadn't, was bittersweet. It was both heartwarming to know how much he had supported me and painful to realize how little recognition I'd received from my parents. Grandma, acting as my most powerful advocate, took it upon herself to clear things up with the extended family. She organized a family gathering that excluded my parents, laying out the entire history of their favoritism, including instances I had forgotten about or had never known. She highlighted events that had spanned years, demonstrating how I had often been passed over, while Amy had been given preferential treatment. Having someone finally acknowledge the years of injustice I had endured was incredibly vindicating. However, it also reopened old wounds that I thought I had buried long ago. I realized there was a lot of pain and bitterness that had never been fully processed, and seeing it all come to light made it clear how deeply the favoritism had affected my entire life. To my surprise, my sister Amy finally found her voice in the midst of this family turmoil. She came to me privately, apologizing for not standing up for me sooner. She admitted that she had been aware of the favoritism but was too afraid to confront it. After several soul-searching conversations with our grandmother and me, Amy confessed that being the favored child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She revealed that our parents' overprotectiveness had stunted her growth. They had always swooped in to handle everything for her, preventing her from learning to stand on her own. Amy shared how much she had longed to accomplish things independently, but our parents had always intervened, robbing her of the chance to learn from her mistakes and develop her own sense of agency. Our discussions marked a turning point in our relationship. For the first time in years, we were able to talk openly about our childhood and the ways in which our parents' behavior had impacted us both. It was an emotional process, but it allowed us to begin mending the sibling bond that had been fractured by years of parental favoritism. We started meeting regularly for coffee, offering each other support as we navigated this family crisis together. In an unexpected turn of events, Amy made the bold decision to use her inheritance to pay for college. This astonished everyone, especially our parents, who had always expected Amy to rely on them for everything. She told me that seeing me stand up for myself had inspired her to take control of her own life for the first time. She enrolled in a local community college, with plans to transfer to a 4-year university later. This move signified a major shift in Amy's mindset. She was finally beginning to take responsibility for her own future, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. Our parents, however, did not take this news well. At first, they reacted with anger, accusing me of turning Amy against them and trying to guilt her into quitting college to help the family. They claimed that she was being selfish for pursuing her own interests instead of following their plans. When that strategy failed, they tried a different approach. After several long and difficult conversations with my grandmother and seeing Amy's newfound independence, my mother began to realize the harm that their favoritism had caused. She started therapy and, to my surprise, reached out to me with an apology. She admitted that she had been unfair to me and asked for a chance to make things right. While I'm cautiously optimistic about rebuilding our relationship, I've also established firm boundaries to protect myself. My father, unfortunately, has been far less willing to accept any responsibility for his actions. He remains angry and defensive, refusing to acknowledge the damage he's done. He continues to distance himself from both Amy and me, even going so far as to threaten to sell our childhood home if we don't come to our senses. And he has also threatened to disown us entirely, claiming that we're ungrateful for everything he's done for us. It's been heartbreaking to watch him become so consumed by his own sense of victimhood that he's willing to alienate his own children. Despite the tension with our parents, Amy and I have grown closer than we've been in years. We now have a siblings day once a month where we spend time together without the influence of our parents. Our hiking trip last month was the most relaxed and connected I've felt with Amy since we were kids. Without the pressure of our parents' expectations, we're finally able to rebuild our relationship on our own terms. It's been a healing process for both of us, and I'm grateful to have my sister back in my life in a meaningful way. As for my parents, the situation remains complicated. My mother is making an effort to repair our relationship through therapy, and we've had a few one-on-one lunches where we've had honest, though difficult, conversations about our past and where we go from here. While it's not perfect, I'm hopeful that we're making progress. My father, on the other hand, is still resistant to change. He continues to refuse any admission of fault and claims that Amy and I should be grateful for everything they've done for us. His refusal to acknowledge the harm he's caused has made it impossible for us to have a meaningful relationship at this time. He's even refused to attend several family gatherings because he can't stand to be in the same room as me. Thankfully, my extended family has been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. My dad's siblings, who have also had to deal with his difficult behavior over the years, have rallied around me and offered their help. I've developed closer relationships with my aunts and uncles, who have shared stories of their own struggles with my dad's controlling tendencies. My cousins have also been supportive, and we've even started a monthly cousin gathering where we can catch up without the drama of our parents. It's been a refreshing change, and I feel more connected to my extended family than I have in years. Financially, I've been making smart use of my inheritance. I paid off my student loans, which has given me a newfound sense of freedom and security. I've also worked with a financial advisor to build a diverse investment portfolio, ensuring that I'm set up for long-term stability. I've even set aside some funds to potentially start my own business in the future. One idea I'm exploring is opening a community center that offers affordable mental health services and financial literacy workshops. But perhaps the most meaningful use of my inheritance has been paying for therapy for both myself and Amy. We're both learning how to set healthy boundaries with our parents and heal from the emotional neglect and favoritism we experienced growing up. This whole process has been transformative for me in ways I never expected. I've learned so much about standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and not allowing guilt or pressure to dictate my decisions. It hasn't been easy. There are still difficult days, but I feel stronger and more empowered than ever before. Dealing with my family's dysfunction has also led me to discover a new passion for helping others in similar situations. I'm considering going back to school to become a family therapist, specializing in working with adult children of emotionally immature parents. In the meantime, I've been volunteering at a local youth center, offering support to kids from challenging family backgrounds. Being able to provide the kind of guidance I wish I had received as a child has been incredibly rewarding. One of the most surprising outcomes of this entire ordeal has been the deepened bond between Amy and me. Without our parents' interference, we're finally able to build a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. We've been helping each other heal from the wounds of our childhood, and I'm excited to see where our relationship goes from here. While the road ahead is still uncertain, I'm confident that we're both on the right path. I am learning to let go of the need to make my father see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, our grandmother now serves as our greatest support. She has shared more stories about our grandfather's pride in us, especially for standing up for ourselves. Grandma's commitment to fairness and understanding has made her a great mediator in family issues, and her role has been invaluable. This process has taught me many lessons about what family truly means. I've come to realize that sometimes the family you choose can be more supportive than the one you're born into. I've formed a closer bond with my aunts, uncles, and cousins, especially those who stood by me. I've also built a close-knit circle of friends who have been essential in helping me through this journey. Setting boundaries and focusing on self-care have become much more important to me. I'm learning how to say no to situations that jeopardize my mental health, and I no longer feel guilty for putting my well-being first. For much of my life, I was so preoccupied with trying to win my parents' approval that I neglected my own interests. I let their favoritism and demands overshadow my personal growth. Now I'm finally taking the time to explore new hobbies and passions. To anyone in a similar situation, my advice is not to let anyone make you feel guilty for fighting for what's rightfully yours, even if it causes tension. It's okay to stand up for yourself. Family dynamics may be complicated, but you deserve fair treatment. Remember, it's never too late to start living the life you deserve. Seek therapy if you need it, surround yourself with positive people, and don't hesitate to set boundaries. Your worth isn't determined by how your family treats you, but by who you are as a person. I want to thank everyone once again for all the encouragement and support you've given me during this difficult time. It has meant more to me than you can imagine. Though the road hasn't been easy, I'm optimistic about the future and have a newfound confidence that I haven't felt in years. I'm excited to see where this next chapter of my life leads and determined to break the cycle of favoritism in my own future family. As for my relationship with my parents, things are still complicated. My mother has continued with therapy and is slowly starting to recognize the harm caused by her favoritism. We've had a few one-on-one conversations discussing our past and the way forward. While progress has been slow and imperfect, there are signs of improvement, and I'm cautiously hopeful. Unfortunately, my father remains resistant to change. He insists that he's done nothing wrong and continues to believe that Amy and I should be grateful for everything he and my mother have done for us. He refuses to be in the same room as me and has missed several family gatherings as a result. It's painful, but I'm trying to let go of my need for his approval. or any hope of controlling how he reacts. Accepting that he may never take responsibility for his actions is difficult, but necessary for my own healing. Grandma has been a constant source of support through all of this. She continues to tell me stories about my grandfather, who was incredibly proud of Amy and me for advocating for ourselves. Grandma's belief in justice and fairness has made her a wonderful mediator in family conflicts, and I'm deeply grateful to have her by my side. This journey has changed my understanding of family. I've learned that family isn't just defined by blood. Sometimes the family you build for yourself through friends and supportive relationships is more meaningful. I've grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who have stood by me throughout this process. Setting boundaries and prioritizing self-care have become crucial to me, and I've grown better at saying no to situations that compromise my mental health. I no longer feel guilty about prioritizing my own well-being. For so long, I was consumed by the need to win my parents' approval and put off exploring my own interests. Now I'm giving myself the freedom to pursue the things that make me happy. To those in similar situations, I would say this: don't let anyone make you feel guilty for claiming what is rightfully yours, even if it causes conflict. It's okay to stand up for yourself and demand fair treatment. Remember, it's never too late to start creating the life you deserve. Seek therapy if needed, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Who you are as a person defines your worth, not how your family treats you. I want to express my deepest gratitude to everyone who offered support and advice during this difficult time. Your words have meant more to me than you could ever know. Though the journey hasn't been easy, I'm filled with optimism for the future and a sense of self-assurance I haven't felt in years. I'm excited to see where this new chapter of my life will take me, and I'm committed to breaking the cycle of favoritism and creating healthier relationships in my own future family. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more real-life stories like this one.